What are the main 3 healing areas after a domestically and religiously destructive relationship? That's what we're going to talk about today. To leave a 5-star review, you can do that with whatever podcast platform you're listening to. And if you want more information, you can go to livebrighterwithtara.info. So 3 healing areas after domestically destructive and religiously abusive situations or destruction. First of all, let's qualify that. Many times when people are in a emotionally destructive or domestically destructive relationship or where there's religious abuse, most of us don't even see it when we're in it, or it's very difficult to see. A lot of times we'll know, especially, a kind girl, we're pretty easygoing, we tolerate way too much. It's easy for us to pass off and really not validate what we're feeling, but our bodies really tell us. Our bodies are not responding in a good way regularly. Maybe it's gotten to the point where it's so bad where we're having mental health issues. Maybe when it's really bad, maybe considering having thoughts of suicide or having thoughts of murder. Like, it can really be traumatic. And sometimes when our cognition is not understanding what's going on, our body, whether it's illness or whatever our body is doing or those challenges, can really tell us things. And we focus again here on emotional abuse and religious abuse because, I feel like with physical abuse, we can kind of identify that a little bit easier. But emotional abuse, there's not the physical results. There's just the emotional destructiveness. And so sometimes it's a lot harder to deal with and quantify. Either way, it's not okay. And then the religious abuse is so sneaky and subtle. And that's really, when we're talking about using religion to control and to, manipulate people, that's when you're talking abuse. And it's so funny because people will use scripture to do this. Things like, you need to submit to your husband, or you need to think of others more important than yourself, or just twisting it. But the best example is looking at the Bible as a whole, and God hates abuse. He hates control and manipulation, and that was the biggest thing he talked about when Jesus was here on earth. Is he was like, it's visiting widows and orphans and caring for people, not having religious rules and beating on people, which he really talked a lot about and he was not okay with. So we really have to understand the heart and the context of all of that, and understand that when religion is used to control and manipulate and keep women in a bad situation, or even men, you really got to question what's going on. Okay, so we're talking about how to heal after that, because it's very difficult to get out of those situations. And then the next step is healing after those situations, and that's a big thing too. So for me, I would say there's 3 main things. First of all is reconnecting with the true God. I know a lot of friends I went to college with that were in this church that really, had some religious dogma that was destructive and caused to a lot of religious abuse in those relationships, and a flurry of divorces, those relationships, along with time. That sort of information, and all those people, I would say majority of those people that did divorce and the women were experiencing the religious abuse, they actually left their relationship with God, and they just couldn't even connect with God again. It was very difficult because their whatever form of God was just awful, as it was being controlled, manipulated, and used in such a harmful way. So it's really hard to disconnect that. But I would say it's the greatest strength you have when you can use what was used to beat you, like Bible verses that are taken out of context, and really understanding the whole love of God and how he views women, and let that be your staff to support you. That was super important to me. Like when I was making my decision and to get a divorce and to do that, I had a choice. It's like, do I do this? Do I feel like God is disapproving and I can't have nothing to do with God because, of what's going on? Because that was kind of the wiring I had received. Or am I going to choose God and run towards him because I am his child and he cares for his children and he does not like his children being hurt and abused? And I chose to run towards him. And I would say, for the amount of time, because it was like 5.5 years ago that I got a divorce, and just seeing where I was back then to where I'm at now, a successful realtor, like financially doing really well, a beautiful marriage, Like, I couldn't have done that without God and his support and his love. I mean, that was an instrumental part of my healing, but really understanding him as he really is, not what others had told me, and really just like reading the Bible for what it really says and kind of ignoring the religion and the different things and really just reading it for myself and getting in touch with who he was and who he truly is. So that's the first thing, is reconnecting with true God. That is just such a healing and support when you know that you are more than enough. You are loved, you are treasured. He has great things in store for you. He believes in you. He loves you. Those are super powerful things. And I was coming from a situation where I was very much subjected to I was not enough and I had to earn in this, and it was just a whole sort of mind-bending situation. So that was huge. So reconnecting with true God. Would you like to start your Live Brighter journey with some free printable affirmation? There's nothing like reminding yourself of God's truth about you. Click the link below. Second is reconnecting with self. So as a kind girl, it's very easy to be disconnected with self because you're constantly focusing on the needs and the cares of others. You're a server naturally, and it's very easy to be disconnected with yourself. And so for me, I had to really change that. First, it started taking full responsibility for where I was at. I was 50% of the relationship and I allowed bad behavior, and that was on me. And I'm not responsible for others people's reaction to me. I had to take 100% responsibility. And then I had to be 100% responsible for my own actions. Instead of thinking, he's making me uncomfortable, whatever, I reframe it as like, I feel uncomfortable and this is why. And I came from a situation where boundaries was something that was never ever considered. So just learning how to have boundaries with myself starting, and having to have self-love and compassion, like that was a whole new thing. I had to, I've talked about how the brain works, how we've naturally got the lawyer and the lifeguard. The lawyer constantly reiterating whatever you tell it, and the lifeguard always trying to keep us safe. And I really had to download that friend, and I had to download, just Jesus into my brain and just encourage myself and give myself the love that I needed to have. And that was amazing in my healing of my brain and my healing journey. Also, just getting connected with what I liked, what was important to me. This was really important, not only in my own joy, and understanding that God created me unique and wonderful, and I didn't need to conform to what another person wanted me to conform to, and I could be myself, and that was great. But it was also super important for me to understand, what if I was ever to get in a relationship again, what would I really need? Knowing myself really well and being like, yeah, I know how I work. I understand my love language. I understand how I connect. I understand what I would need. I understand what I can offer. I can understand what I can't offer. So that was really great. And then just, the simple things like what brings me joy, like going for a hike, being in nature, being with my children. Like I love playing with they're adult children right now. I mean, my youngest is 15 and the others are past 18. I absolutely delight in just hanging out with them. So just finding things that bring me joy and not feeling like I needed to justify that. Also, like I would buy things for myself. Every time I had a closing as a realtor, I would buy something special for myself. And that was actually, I called it part of my therapy, because I was more than happy to buy something for everybody else. And my needs were always last. And I really felt like that is not what God called me to do, and not what God calls us to do in the Bible. So that was what I just made myself. And it was very uncomfortable at first. I just bought myself, a really nice pair of boots after a closing, or a jacket I had always wanted. And just kind of trained myself that I am valued, I am more than enough, I am worthy of gifts, and was able to just give that love to myself and receive that love also from God. And that was very powerful. Then I had to completely retrain myself and retrain my thinking about how I dealt with others. This was really a big deal. For many years, I felt like I was responsible to maintain other people's happiness and joy around me, and that was naturally the people pleaser, kind girl. And I realized that is not healthy and that is not what I was called to do. So, really studying like what boundaries are and how, I mean, gosh, Jesus was a great boundary boss, and just kind of observing how he did things and how important it was for me to have boundaries and be okay with things and not be okay with things. To let my yes be yes and my no be no. Like I would not automatically say, yes, I'll do it. I had to really start checking in with myself and being like, I don't think I'm going to because I don't have that energy for that. Or I'm not, that just doesn't really sit with me and I don't really want to do that. And that was okay. I mean, before in my old thinking, that would be very selfish. But really, it's healthy boundaries. It's like being true to who you are. I mean, how many people, want people to help you who don't really want to help you if you think about the tables being turned? We want people that really want to help or want to be with us and that aren't doing it out of obligation. But yet I was doing that to others. I would just automatically say yes or feel obligated. I also really looked at my friendships and looked at like equality within the friendships. Was I the one always giving, always the one giving, always one serving? And those are great to some degree, but my closest relationships really needed to be equal. And for me, because my decision was such a big decision in my family, like choosing to get a divorce was in my family, I was like the first one to do that. And this is like extended family and all that. And we have just a very, a very deep history of tolerating abuse and bad behavior. And for me, getting a divorce and choosing to leave, and I had to be like, this is the hardest decision I'm having to make. And if people are willing to listen, I'm willing to talk to them. But if they're not, it is not my job to change other people's minds. It is not my job to emotionally babysit other people while I'm going through the hardest thing in my own life. So I really had to delineate what my job was. My job was to take care of my children, to establish my business so that I could take care of my children well. So that was my job. And my job was to keep myself safe and healthy so I could take care of my children. And so, that brings honor to God because, He says we cannot love others unless we love ourselves. So we need to be loving ourselves in a healthy way. It doesn't make us selfish, it just helps us give from a full cup. So those are the 3 areas of healing I really had to focus on after the emotionally destructive and religiously destructive situation and marriage I had for 22 years. It was reconnecting with the true God, reconnecting with myself, and having healthy relationship with others. So that's one reason why I made the Unravel notebook, because it's basically kind of like journal prompts or notebook prompts in these 3 areas, because that's what helped me heal. And I kind of took notes during the whole time I was healing. So I compiled that into the Unravel notebook and I named it that because it's like unraveling our minds and unraveling our thinking and just clearing it up. And that just helps us to live brighter and to shine brighter. So that is the reason, that was the inspiration for me writing the Unravel notebook. So just think about like growing 1% a day. And I really like thinking of it in small steps. And it's amazing what can happen with doing that. I would just encourage you to, in whatever area, if you need to reconnect with God more or reconnect with yourself or others, just to think about those things and take one little nugget and grow 1% each day. I believe in you. Let your light shine brighter.